Good morning, Skallywags! Spoo here with another mindless riddle. A movie is defined as a series of recorded images that, when played back on a television or a screen, tells a story. In other words, it is a medium of visual storytelling. And one of the most fundamental rules of visual storytelling is show, don't tell. As it is a visual storytelling, we should be able to see the story play out before us, not simply be told a story from a screen. If your character is a criminal, then maybe we should see him doing some crimes, instead of just being told that he's a criminal and then never actually seeing him do anything, criminally. One of my lights is freaking out. What this basically boils down to is that while every single movie out there has its fair share of exposition, some far more than others, that we, the viewer, should be able to watch as our characters' secrets and thoughts, emotions, conflicts, all play out in a series of something called scenes. You take all the emotions and secrets and thoughts and conflicts of all of your characters and you smash them together. You got yourself a plot or a storyline. Then you take the scenes, you take the storyline, you smash those together, you got yourself a movie. Now, to be fair, as mentioned, every movie is going to have that one scene or that one part. Sometimes it's even that one character whose sole purpose is to deliver exposition. Maybe it's to explain some kind of important plot detail that we, the viewer, need to know in order to enjoy what's happening on screen. Maybe it's something that's simply too hard to represent visually, so they have to tell us. And in doing so, that's okay. It's to be expected, as long as it doesn't get, too out of hand. A good movie will just keep this all to a minimum and basically only tell us the things that it has to prevent the movie from slowing down. That's the important part. As soon as the movie starts to slow down, your viewer starts to lose interest. Gotta keep it moving, keep it going like that. Remember, that rule is show, don't tell. So you watch a movie like, Star Wars: A New Hope, and Obi-Wan shows up and he's telling Luke about
before the dark times, before the Empire.
Can you imagine if they actually took the time to show us all
with the taxation of trade routes?
Oh yeah. I forgot about that. All of this can be done in one of a few different ways. Take movies like, say, Pulp Fiction or Memento, for example. These movies are told out of order, or backwards in Memento's case. See, that allows us, the viewer, to actually put the pieces of the puzzle together along with the characters on screen, which keeps our minds busy, keeps us guessing as to what's going to happen next, and it lets us feel a lot of what the characters on screen are feeling, because we, like them, are along for the ride. Take a movie like Sixth Sense or Citizen Kane, for example. Both of these movies give us a little something up front. A little tease, a little taste. Kind of whets our appetite a little bit so that we can dive deeper into what's about to happen and then figure out the relevance of that little piece as the movie goes along. Mention Star Wars, take Star Wars or like, say, The Matrix, for example. Both of these are taking place in a completely alien, completely fantastical world. So obviously in this case, you're going to have a little bit more exposition than usual because we, the viewer, need to, kind of know how this world operates. It's not our world as we know it, so we have to know at least a little bit of what is going on in that world so we can be brought up to speed. But in movies like these, you'll notice that your main character, your Luke Skywalker, your Neo, they're very bland. Luke is just a farm boy. He's a nobody, a little on the whiny side, just wants to go and hang out with his friends. You got Neo, who's working at a dead-end job. He, likes to work with computers and stuff, but that's his passion. Otherwise he's stuck in a cubicle. All the while, both of these characters dreaming of bigger and better things. The reason that these characters are like this is because they are you. It's called the everyman. Basically, your character is a blank slate, and that allows us, the viewer, to actually picture ourselves as them. That way, we are the ones that are going off into space and saving the galaxy from the Empire. We are the ones that are, going to Zion and going to fight the machines. That makes us a part of the story, gives us excitement, and lets us go along for the journey. Even take something like, say, Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, both of these based off of books. And of course, in a book, your inner thoughts and your secrets and all that good stuff, that's just spelled out for you right there on the page. But you watch the movie, and obviously, unless the movie has a narrator or something, you're not getting the inner thoughts of all your characters, as a voiceover or something. Instead, in a movie like this, it's very important that you hire good actors, because these actors are now responsible for portraying all of those inner thoughts with a simple look. Again, they're showing us. They're not telling us. So there are a number of ways that you can keep the viewer, interested, invested in the story, excited, caring about your characters, etc. And how do they pull it off? With good actors, with good directors, most importantly, with good writing. I mean, everything is important, but if you don't have a good, base to start with, then you've got everything else is going to just crumble on top of it. We need characters that we actually care about. Characters that have depth and goals and values, something that we can identify with. We need villains who also have depth and a clear goal in mind, something that we understand, something that doesn't leave the audience sitting around asking, but why? And most importantly, we need a conflict that actually goes somewhere. A firm beginning, a firm ending, and, a good concrete middle while you're at it. And I don't know, how about no loose ends? Unless, of course, this is part of a series and you're intentionally leaving loose ends with the thought of, tying them up later. That's like a whole different thing. But most importantly, you need a plan. You need to know not only where is your story going, but you need to know how it's going to get there. You don't just say, on the 4th of July, I'm going to take a vacation. Never actually plan, your destination or, the hotel or gas money or none of that stuff. You're just kind of hoping that when the 4th of July gets here, that suddenly you will just be on vacation somewhere. That's not how things work. See, all of those great movies from the past, you look at that list of best movies ever made, and they all have one giant thing in common. They didn't have to worry about things like fan service. Now, don't get me wrong. I love fan service sometimes. Easter eggs, fan service can be a great thing. It's a lot of fun to kind of watch the background of a scene and be like, oh, look, there's a thing that I know. Just as long as the fan service doesn't stand in the way of a good narrative, or as long as it doesn't, slow things down. I would love to say that fan service can actually help matters sometimes, but then I thought about it for like 2 hours, and I even messaged a whole bunch of my friends and asked my girlfriend, can you name one time where fan service actually pushed the story forward? And the only thing we came up with was, well, there was the T-Rex in Jurassic World that was the same T-Rex from Jurassic Park 1 because it had the scars and things and ended up killing the Indominus Rex, so I guess that kind of counts. Or perhaps a better example would be in The Mandalorian. The end of episode 5, of course, you got the boots in the sand and the spur sound, and everybody's like, oh my god, is that Boba Fett? And of course, now we know that, yeah, it is, because he's coming back for season 2, woo! But you say, hang on a second, Spoo, maybe they had that planned back when they did that scene. And that's entirely possible. But since Disney took over and we lost all those great, Legends books from back in the day, there has been no definitive proof that Boba Fett survived the Sarlacc or not. But of course he did, because he's like the most popular character in Star Wars history, and God forbid that Disney passes up that opportunity. Fan service! Or there's the case of, like, say, a Bond film, for example. It's inevitable that at some point in time during that movie, the villain is going to have Bond exactly where he wants him. But instead of doing like he should do and, just shoot him in the head, he's going to take this time to reveal his fiendish plot. This is both fan service, mainly stemming from an old movie trope, but still fan service. And it's also a metaphorical bat to the head of exposition. But the important thing is that it still moves the plot forward, and in fact, it could actually be argued that it speeds it up. Because by revealing the fiendish plot, Bond now has all the information that he needs to foil said plot, instead of spending hours or days or weeks or even months trying to figure everything out on his own. And just imagine that for a second. You got an entire Bond movie that 3/4 of the movie is just Bond like on Google trying to figure stuff out. Doesn't exactly make for an exciting movie. But like I said, that's more of an old classic movie trope than it is actual fan service. It's really just an example. You know, and ironically enough, I'm about 1,000 miles off topic here, kind of basically doing exactly what I'm talking about here. I haven't even got to what I'm talking about yet. The bottom line is that all of the movies that I've already mentioned, and thousands and thousands of other films on top of that since the beginning of cinema, whether those movies were 90 minutes or they were 4 hours long, they all gave us a cohesive story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. All of those loose ends nice and tightly wrapped up before the credits began to roll. Now, for a movie to be considered to be feature length, it must be at least 40 minutes long. The very first feature length movie was The Story of the Kelly Gang, which was released in Australia back in 1906. 114 years later, there are now somewhere between 500 and 800,000 feature-length films in existence. And maybe it's just me, but it feels like there should be way more than that, but apparently not. That's somewhere between 500 and 800,000 examples of visual storytelling that stuck to the age-old principle of show, don't tell for 114 years. So why? Why now? Why is there this new trend that is shooting across Hollywood all of a sudden that takes that fundamental rule of visual storytelling and just flushes it down the toilet? One particular film company called Disney, that shall remain nameless, is particularly guilty of this egregious atrocity to cinema. Especially when it comes to, I don't know, a couple of beloved franchises. Maybe it's because the franchises in question have simply grown too big to contain their own story. Maybe it's because we finally live in a time where it's not only okay, but it's actually cool to be a nerd. So things like Easter eggs and fan service have just become too big of a beast to contend with. Maybe it's because movies aren't made by filmmakers anymore. Instead of being made by somebody with a vision, they're made by this committee of executives who all have their own conflicting ideas and opinions and agendas. What should or shouldn't go in the movie based on the market research or based on what one particular demographic thought of the last movie that we released in this genre, thus just leaving us with movies that are bloated and convoluted and filled with conflicting ideologies and conflicting ideas and conflicting agendas and forced diversity, SJW stuff that people complain about, fan service, Easter eggs, connections to other movies within the same property, all the way up until there simply isn't any room left for something so trivial as a cohesive story or character development or even characters with any depth at all, for that matter. Maybe it's all of that. Probably not. Right? But whatever the reason, the result is that we have reached this point in time where the medium of visual storytelling isn't telling us visually anymore. Not completely, anyway. Instead, there is this trend of writers, directors, actors, sometimes all three, having to go on Twitter or other social media to explain the movie that you just watched. Now, there's always been, expanded media, whether it's comic books or novels, or the novelization of the movie usually has things in it that weren't actually in the film itself, or television series or whatever. This is not what we're talking about here. This is a situation where the movie that you watched left so many plot holes, so many unanswered questions, so many things that just didn't make sense, so many things that were set up and never paid off, and so many things that happened without explanation of any kind that the people that made the movie now have to go onto social media to explain the movie. That's kind of what the movie is supposed to do. It's like a joke. If you have to explain why a joke is funny, the joke isn't funny. And if the movie is what's called a popcorn film, that's your typical summer blockbuster where you can just kind of shut your brain off, not think too much, just munch on popcorn and enjoy. And it's not some David Lynchian Twin Peaks, only 1/3 of the population is even going to see the movie in the first place, and only 1/3 of those people are going to understand it. And yet, somehow, you still manage to leave people scratching their heads as they walk out of the theater, to a point where you then have to take to social media to explain what just happened in the movie that you just watched. Then you and your movie have failed miserably. I mean, it's not even explaining the joke anymore. It's literally just telling the setup to the joke without telling the punchline, and just hoping that everyone that heard the joke will just assume what the punchline is. And then when they don't, then you go on social media and you post the punchline. But I mean, how many people heard the joke to begin with and are now actually seeing the punchline? You failed! You've completely failed! It's show, don't tell. Not show, then tell on social media afterwards. It officially ceases to be a movie and just becomes a series of things happening on a screen for reasons that most of you will never get to know. Enjoy! The movie literally fails to be what it is, which is supposed to be a completed work of cinema, a film, a movie. Instead, it's just all set up and no payoff. And what's worse, as if all of that wasn't bad enough, what's worse is that there have actually been times where the writers and the directors have gone to social media to explain things and actually disagree on whatever it is that they're answering. So now, not only do you have these head-scratcher questions, after you watch the movie, but now you're getting an answer that may or may not be true. If the people that made the movie aren't even on the same page with each other, how are we, the viewers, supposed to be on the same page with the movie? Now, a couple minutes ago, I mentioned irony, that I was kind of doing what I'm talking about. And what I meant by that is today, we're not going to go into any of these questions and or answers. Instead, we're going to do that Wednesday and Friday. Basically, a typical script for an episode is 3, 4, 5 pages long, and Friday's episode's script is like 25 pages long, and I don't want this to end up being like a 14-hour long video. So I'm going to split it up into 3 parts. And there are 2 movies in particular that we're going to focus on that are not only 2 movies where this happened, but they're 2 movies that were so massive that even thinking about leaving any stone unturned is just absolutely ludicrous. Those being Avengers Endgame, which, yes, I know I have talked about at length on a number of occasions already, but hey, we're doing it again. And Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, which I have not really gotten to talk about, so I'm kind of looking forward to that one. So we'll do Avengers on Wednesday, and we'll do Star Wars on Friday, so please come back and join me for those, because there's some really good stuff in these scripts. I've actually been working on this one for a few weeks now, which is why the show's been a little quiet here. So thank you for your patience, guys. I love you, and I'm getting back to it, trying to get actually ahead so that even if anything happens to come up, I've already got videos ready in the can and I don't have to worry about it. So yes, so come back on Wednesday for Avengers, Friday for Star Wars. We'll do this then. Meanwhile, if you have any questions that you have from those movies, from when you saw those movies, drop them in the comments below. I want to know if there's something I missed in there, because I went through these movies extensively, so hopefully I've caught it all. Yeah, be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those wonderful things. I'm doing a collectible of the day thing on, well, now on all three of them, I guess. So go over, check that out. There may even be a video. I don't know, maybe. If that's something you guys would be interested in, let me know. Also, hey, yeah, while you're out here surfing on the World Wide Webs, jump on over to www.geekykool.com. It's your one-stop shop for all things nerd. Whether it's, you know, these videos, these videos are there. You can check them out there. I know you're watching it now on YouTube or something, but you can also watch it over there. Or maybe you are watching it there. Isn't that weird? Not really. Articles, top 10 lists, reviews. There's even a weekly live vlog that you yourself can take part in. That's every Tuesday night, so, you know, check that out. I actually was just on there a couple of times talking about Star Wars and stuff. That was, yeah. So yeah. Again, that's www.geekykool.com. If it's a nerd thing, you're gonna find it there. Stop on by, tell them that Skallywag Productions sent you. And that's gonna wrap it up for this one, guys. I know it's kind of a cliffhanger there, and I took forever to get to the point, but well, I really wanted to set this up, and how much this just makes my blood boil. So yeah, we'll be back on Wednesday to talk about well, this. So yeah, thanks for watching. See you then.